Oh,
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Apologies, folks, for running a few minutes late today. I had a preceding meeting that ran a little bit over.
It's okay. No problem.
So we're probably going to be going in about a minute. Is there anything that folks want to discuss before we go to the issues PR board?
actually, with Denise, I'd like to share our plan, what exactly will be delivered till the release date, and what will be some kind of soft commitment. Maybe already had a chance and look through this spreadsheet. Just to
I've had a chance to glance at the spreadsheet. It would potentially be a valuable thing to walk through here. Is there anybody who has other things that related to the project board that they would like to make sure we cover before we jump into that? I know, for example, I know you've got stuff in progress, Perry, for example, and I apologize the last few days. I've had other things that have precluded me from poking in on them, but it looks like you're making good progress.
Yes, yet like we have some PRs that has to be merged now. So maybe like I think those are under.
Yeah, I think the last one I had done is that I taken a quick look at was to ask you a question about why something was an SDK instead of SDK SROV, and you gave an excellent answer to that question, which I have not had a chance to comment on yet in the PR. So
yeah. Apart from that, like we have some PRs in SDK kernel. So I think we are almost done with the review. For
that is fantastic news. And just so you know, as a matter of style, I will often simply ask questions because I actually legitimately want to understand. They're usually not objections. So.
Yeah, actually, that is a valid question. Like I appreciate that. So I have addressed that concern, and I'm just going to close that.
I understand. I used to know a guy long ago who asked very aggressive questions in reviews. And I knew him well enough to know that he wasn't actually challenging people with his very aggressive questions. He legitimately was curious. He just had a very aggressive tone. But ever since then, I'm sort of, I would like tell this to people because they come to me like, why is he opposing my patch? And it's like, he's actually not opposing your patch. I understand it sounds like that, but he's actually just curious what's going on. So I try and clarify my questioning reviews lest I come across that way, because you never know how you're going to be heard.
Yeah. In fact, actually, I have closed that PR because that is not needed. So that code need not be part of SDK repo. Yes.
Oh, good to know. Sometimes things work out that way.
Yeah. I just closed it. Yeah.
Cool. So Denise, so anything else that folks want to walk through before Denise sort of walks through what the folks working with him think that they can deliver for the June 8th release 1.0 of the priorities?
Yep. So can I share the screen with our table?
Please. I think you mechanically have the capacity, and you certainly have the permission.
Oh, okay. Give me a second. Do you see my screen?
I do see your screen.
Oh, cool. So we prepared a table, NSM release 1, and we currently have the next state, our hard commitment.
Oh my goodness, I'm so terribly sorry. When I glanced at this, I've been glancing at the first tab and not the second. Okay, this is great. I'm glad that you're presenting this.
Oh, cool. So we plan to complete interdomain till release. Also, we plan to complete floating interdomain, but without examples. We are not sure that we'll complete example till release for floating interdomain.
This is fair. They're more complicated examples at the stage. I'd particularly love it if we could at least get the kind examples working, because that allows people to kick the tires. But I understand that there's additional complexity in standing up the examples, especially since you have to think about how to make them easy for people to do.
Oh, yes, we also can a bit discuss about this on the project board with floating interdomain and interdomain statuses.
Yeah, and I do apologize. I had something sweep through late last week unexpectedly that I could not ignore. And I should be getting a lot more attentive starting hopefully later today.
So, okay, also we plan to provide a healing, but currently we found that healing has many issues. Vladimir had provided a table with visualization of issues.
And I glanced at the issue just enough to realize that it was the usual high quality of analysis that I've become accustomed to from Vlad. And so I do need to go back and take a look at what he's written and see what we can figure out. It does feel to me like a central issue that we're having is over the stability of the names of registered endpoints. Is that a correct perception?
Not actually. I guess Denise will open the diagram. So actually, we don't have registry healing right now, and it slightly slows down the healing of manager. Because if you want to restore the manager, we need to.
Oh, I mean this diagram that Vlad had provided at last week. And here we are not sure that we can complete all these issues, but we can complete part of them till release. So please take a look at the diagram and
1 second. My audio has just gone nuts. Give me 1 second.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
We're hearing you. Yep, yes.
Right, now my audio is back to normal. I apologize. My office has the acoustics of a cathedral. So yes, I did see this picture. I haven't had a chance to fully digest it. Would it help for you to say a few words about it, Vlad? And maybe to make it sing, Denise?
Oh, okay, yep. Also, we plan to provide NCA composition stuff. Currently, Mikhail is working on a firewall example, and he currently testing ACL chain element for SDK BBP.
That's fantastic. The ACL API in BPP is really nicely done, but it's not the simplest API in BPP by any means.
Yep, and we are not sure that we'll provide example, MD example for deployments Kubernetes repository till release. So we also...
The composition example, what I hear you saying is the composition example is at risk. That's a perfectly valid statement. That's something I would like to strongly see us achieve. So I may actually reach out and see if I can provide some assistance on that personally. But yeah, so I've got that. Keep going.
Okay. Our next thing that topology aware scale from 0 is currently so close.
I completely agree with you. You know, sometimes you look at a thing and you're like, this is not the highest priority item, but the person working on it is close to finish and they have a lot of momentum and we should really let them finish.
So as we can see, topology-aware scale from 0 will be done in next days. So after this, I guess Daniil can help to Vladimir with healing, or he can also help to Mikhail with NC composition. So and finally, we plan to provide Wireguard improvements into VPP. Artyom already is working on it. And we also plan to provide MD example for Wireguard remote mechanism.
That is fantastic. And the things I've been hearing from Artem were sounding very positive. I took a look at the Garrett that we pushed to VPP for the first chunk of that work on, this was I'm drawing a blank on which piece of the work it was. Oh yeah, it was the not having fib entry. I had taken a look at that PR. It looked like it was really well done. And then the multi-interface stuff, Artem had been saying good things about his progress there. It's one of those things where, in principle, the multi-interface stuff is really simple, but I understand that he has to take care because some simple changes are higher risk. In other words, you need to be more careful to make sure that you haven't screwed something up when you do them. And so I'm really excited to see that coming together. One other thing to be aware of, Artem, just so you know, is and I think I pushed patches such that you will not run into this over the weekend. But right now, if you come up with, if you bring the border up right now, and if the border binds using AF packet to the local interface, please note there is a mode where you can use it without binding to the local interface, in which case none of what I'm about to say actually applies. But if you use it in the normal way that we're usually using it, where it binds to the local interface with AF packet, it will by default have an ACL that blocks everything from that interface. And the reason for this is that because we share a MAC address and an IP address with the native interface, when we bind to it with AF packet, it can cause difficulties and problems if, for example, we respond with IPMP ported reachable messages or other things we shouldn't be doing. There is currently the case that there is a chain element called pinhole that if we have a remote mechanism that specifies an IP address and a port, it will go through and add an ACL rule to allow that through. And that's currently working correctly with VXLAN. And it should be the case, Artem, that because you've got an IP address and a port in the messaging for Wireguard, it should be the case that it should just work for Wireguard as well. But I wanted you to be aware that it's there, because in the unlikely event that it doesn't just work, you could find yourself in situations where you're trying to understand why it is that your packets aren't arriving at the Wireguard correctly in VPP. And so if you see something like that, take a look at the ACL. Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
One of the things to be aware of, Artem, just to keep in mind, I know that you're working on pushing this upstream for VPP master, which is exactly the right thing. But it would be useful to have a patch of this that also applies. It would be useful to have a patch that we could backport to VPP 2009, which is the current version of VPP that we're using in network service mesh. Because I have been poking at upgrading to the most recent version of VPP, but there is work for that may not get done for our 1.0 release. And so in the event that we're still on VPP 2009, it would be very helpful to have a patch that can be applied in the Go VPP project to it, so that we can get these Wireguard features as well. Make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
And feel free to reach out to me over Slack to point you to how to add patches to the Go VPP stuff. It's pretty easy, but just wanted to make sure that you get what you need there. So back to you, Denise.
Ed, do you have any questions related to our plan for release?
I don't. Do other people on the call?
Oh, okay.
I know we've got Perry and Lionel as well. I do want to be super clear. Open source projects don't make single unified plans as to we're all going to do this or we're all going to do that. Instead, what you get is an expression of what different groups of people working on the project are going to actually work on. So I want to make it super clear, particularly to Perry and Lionel, that the absence of some item that they're working on for the 1.0 release in the list that Denise just presented does not in any way, shape, or form exclude it from the 1.0 release. In particular, I would really love to get all the stuff you're doing, Perry, in for that if we could. It's just an expression of the work that Denise and his folks are working on. Does that make sense to the two of you?
Yep, it makes sense.
And Perry and Liddell, does that make sense to you guys as well?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Okay, fantastic. Every now and again, as different people are sort of walking through their individual sets of plans for different groups of open source projects, people will sometimes misunderstand and think that their stuff is being left out. And it's not your stuff is being left out. It's simply this group of people in the community are working on this group of stuff. And, you know, like I said, I'm really interested in seeing the work that Perry is doing land. I also wanted to express that while I would still love to see the refactoring work done for the point to multi-point stuff in 1.0, and I'm pretty confident we can get it in for 1.1. Unless it turns out that the simplification involved in that makes the healing work easier and faster, it's unlikely that that will land in time for 1.0. It was always sort of a bit of a stretch, but I'm just being realistic.
Okay.
So, excellent. So thank you. That was actually really well put together, and I apologize. I know that I've inputted that spreadsheet before, and I literally just been looking at the wrong tab because that tab was excellent in terms of laying things out. And I think you fit the priorities very, very well. And I'm excited at how much we're going to be able to get into the 1.0 release. A quick question I have there, Denise, is one of the things I didn't see there is mechanically, how are we intending to release things? I know that we had talked a little bit about a release repo, and I was just curious if you had given any thought to that.
Oh, yes, we actually have a spec document about how we can do this automatically. But for the first release, we can just probably move all latest images that have passed CI. We can just move them from latest to the release version. So we need to just
tag something in deployment K8 for them so that people can run them. And yeah, no, that's certainly an option, and it's good to know that it's been given some thought. But I presume that there's an issue for the thoughts on the release repo stuff.
Oh, sorry. Could you please repeat?
You had mentioned that you had written down some stuff about the release repo. I presume that's the document that we've already talked about in terms of that.
Oh, so previously I provided a document that show how we can make it working automatically with
Exactly, and all I was doing was confirming that that was the document you were referring to when you talked about having a spec for the release repo.
So I guess we can discuss it offline, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Excellent. So we're running a little bit short on time before the community call. And so rather than just walking through the board manually, is there anything that needs sort of more urgent attention in general? Let me go ahead and share the board, but we may have to be a little bit more targeted in walking through it today than just linearly walking through it.
Oh, we also have good news. Artem completed testing for on all clusters. So currently our CI testing working on all clusters as we have in monorepo. So now multi-repo and SM covered.
That is amazing news. I've been seeing still some intermittent issues in the packet stuff. Has that been resolved? I don't think it's a brokenness on our part. It's the trouble with packet stuff.
No, it's actually a problem with VXLAN tests. It's in to do the top one issue. Haven't just looked in this, but it's definitely the problem only with VXLAN tests on packet.
That's really odd. I'm very curious to see what that is.
Probably it is related to host network flag. Probably it's somehow conflicted with packet clusters.
Well, there may be something there. So I think that there were some things that got sorted out. So you figured a few of those things out with GKE, if I recall, Artem. So it may be something similar with packets. And this is why we test across multiple environments, because it's always something. So. Okay. So that's very good to know, and I'm extremely pleased. And thank you, Artem, for all your hard work in getting those going. I know it's just sort of a continuous. You do it, something goes bump, you go through a lot of logs, you figure it out, you try something. It's just it's a lot of work. Anything else that's immediately urgent? Okay. Are we still seeing this kernel of the XLAN issue in CI?
Oh, so from the last, all last builds are green. So probably we could wait a bit, and looks like it is done. But I guess we need to be sure.
Yeah, I would definitely want to wait and see if it recurs. It's good to know that we're not seeing it recently, but I definitely want to keep an eye out for it. Cool. Anything else before we jump to the community meeting? All right. I will see you all over there.